Did you know that there are 90,000 children and young people in the care system across the UK? One child enters the care system every 15 minutes. That means this morning in our time, or the time of this conference, there will be about 20 to 25 children and young people that will enter care. And so, unfortunately, many of those children have their belongings moved in black plastic bin bags. One of these, a black plastic bin bags. In 2014, while I was attending a fostering course with my wife, I was a youth worker. We're adoptive parents. One of my children, my daughter's, is adopted. She came out of the care system very young. And we had some space in our house. But we had a little break from doing foster care and had moved into a new trust area. So we thought, well, we could go back and do a little bit more fostering. So contacted the trust, got invited into the introduction course, which we had already done a few times before. Week 4 in that program was this. It was talking about children in care on the move. And they showed this little video. The video was of a girl in a wheelchair, a teenager, and she said this, that whenever we move, the trusts don't give suitcases. Sometimes foster carers will loan us suitcases, but quite often our belongings are moved in black plastic bin bags, and we lose our dignity. Now, I don't know how you feel when you hear that, but when I heard that, it broke my heart. And I left that night thinking, do you know what? I'm going to fix that. So as a youth worker, as it said, and I thought, well, I'll go back to my young people that I was leading. And you know, young people like a new backpack every year for school to start their school year off. I'm sure you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, in my wrist space, I've got a couple of suitcases that just aren't the color of this year. Or maybe I liked another one that I found in TK Maxx and that one will do somebody else and you never use it. And I thought my simple fix was this. If I go back to my young people, they could collect their spare bags from people, friends and family, and we could collect them and give them to our local trust or local authority. But the more and more that I started to think through this problem, the more I started to realize that these children have huge value, the huge worth. The fact that they breathe, they have value, they have real worth, and they have the right to a brand new bag, not a second-hand bag, but they have a right to a brand new bag just like you and me. It's not their fault that they're in care. It's generally adults have let them down. Society has let them down. They're just children. And so that led me in this whole path. Well, how do I get brand new bags to these incredible children in our care system, those 90,000 plus in the UK? I started also to look at the problem of the bin bag, and what I found out was that it was a global problem. In America, there's 500,000 children in care. You go into Australia, you find loads. Canada, and in the development world, there is huge, huge, huge amounts of these incredible children that have been let down. And so they often, in every country, you could find out that they were using bin bags or in America, trash bags. And so that took me on this huge journey of, well, second-hand bags aren't an option. How do I get new bags? Well, I was a youth worker, and as being a youth worker, it was in that kind of charity space. And as I was looking at the context, the climate of our context of funding, you know, I could see that every organization that was already set up was struggling with the whole funding climate. And I started to look at other organizations who are working with kids in care, and I started to see how they were struggling with funding. And I thought, well, if I start something new, a charity, to sort this problem out and to get bags to these incredible children, then all I would do would be to slice this funding pot. And the organizations that were structured to depend on funding would just get less, and we would get to fix our problem. But ultimately, these incredible children in care, these 90,000 children in care plus in the UK, would lose out because there would be a lack of funding going into those other organizations. And so that took me on this journey of really passionately believing that no child in care should carry their life in a bin bag. And as I started to think this through, I came across this organization. Now, I wonder if many of you have ever come across Tom's Shoes. Anybody come across? I heard the founder of this company, it's a company that was set up about 12 years ago. Set up because the guy Blake came across children that didn't have shoes. He had $5,000 and he decided I can either donate that $5,000 on shoes, or I can invest that $5,000 and create a company that makes shoes so that every time a pair of shoes are sold, a pair of shoes can be given to a child who needs a pair. And I'd heard him tell his story about 3 or 4 years before I come across the black bin bag story. And it inspired me because I've always, even though I've been a youth worker, I've always been interested in business, but I've never been interested in personal wealth. I've always been interested in helping people. So the idea of having a cafe, I would have been broke because I've given too much free coffee out. Because I always wanted to help the people who needed that. And so I knew that business at that stage was never, and that's why I ended up in youth work. But the learning that I had was this hunger to learn to grow as a leader and to be into organizational structure and management and how to be visionary and get team on board and so forth. And so this company really inspired me, the Tom's Shoe. And it was an introduction to this mindset and this thinking around social capitalism, where you can make money, you can make profit. Profit is good, but it's what you do with your profit. And so it really connected me because I could make money and I could enjoy making money and making profit so that I could give and help people. Now, I was 43 at the time. I have no family background in business. In fact, I'll tell you a little secret, and you're not going to listen to another word that I say after all experts this morning. I got an ungraded in my GCSE business studies at school. I am actually dyslexic. I'm like a lot of the entrepreneurs in the world today that we just learn differently. And for me, I had no family background, no background in business at all. And I started dreaming about, could I use this model of buy one, give one to fix the problem with the black bin bags? Could I create a bag company that says we sell bags to give bags to these incredible children in care? So I started to share it with my friends and my family. And I got that's a lovely idea, Dave. But the reality is, to start business, you need money. You have no experience in business. None of our family have any experience in business. You don't know any, economists at that time. I didn't know anybody. How are you going to do this? And it took me back to really thinking through this stuff. Is that I had lots of ideas growing up and didn't do anything about them. This wasn't the first time I was faced with an idea. This wasn't the first that I had been faced with a problem that I wanted to fix. Most of the time, I listened to those voices and said, you have no business background. You can't do anything about it. You have no money. You need money to start a business. Isn't that right? That's what we were told at the time. So I came across this guy's book, Blake McCoskey, Start Something That Matters. And he had a quote in it that really kind of struck me. It says, someday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. If it's important to you and you want to do it, eventually just do it and correct the course along the way. I've been listening a lot about that this morning, about that pathway. And I started to look at this and think, do you know what? Someday has robbed me up to now. I have a problem I want to fix, and this time it's not going to rob me. I spoke to my wife, says, can I try it? And says, yes, you have my support, but we don't have any money. Being a youth worker, I had enough just to pay my bills every month, never enough to have a lot of money in the bank. And so I had £500. I said to my wife, will you get behind me here and we'll use that £500. We'll not put too much risk in this because I'll prove this works. Took the £500 and I started a business called Madlug. Madlug stands for Make a Difference Luggage, because no child in care should carry a life in a bin bag. Basically, it's a bag company that we sell backpacks to school kids, to people going into work. We sell them to corporates. We sell them, basically we're selling into about 10 countries today. Most of our sales, 80% of our sales are outside of Northern Ireland. And this was only 3.5 years ago. But I started this company called Madlug. With every bag someone purchases, one is given to an incredible child in the care system. So I had £500 to start. The leadership thing I want to pass on to you this morning is, I'm sure in this room that you have ideas. I'm sure that you're faced with stuff like black bin bag stories. And you're thinking the someday, or I haven't got enough money. I want to tell you that the key leadership thing is, don't wait. There's no better time than now to start. And so I started it with the £500. The £500 was the 40% deposit for the branding company to get started. Not the whole amount, the 40%. I had no other money, and I was on a program with Invest NI at the time, on a social entrepreneurs program. And my mentor was mentoring me, and obviously when you're hungry and you're wanting to get ahead of the game and you're being creative in that, every time I met him, I was about 5 steps ahead of where he thought I was, or was going to be. And he had some sessions left, and then I showed him the work that we had done with a graphic company. And he says, obviously they've been spending a lot of time, and you've been spending a lot of time with them. Get them the invoices and we'll pay the rest of the bill. And that's how I got it. Then we went live with product. One sample of 6 colored bags of each of the colors. And I went live on Facebook, and I went, we're going live tomorrow on a little Shopify website with a free template. And we're going live tomorrow. Get your bags. Now, we want you to be patient. It may take 3 weeks to get these. The reality was that we had no stock. Now, if you're thinking about that, I can't advocate that, because what I've since found out that that's illegal. So I just call it as that's the getting the ungraded at business studies at GCSE allowed me to do that. And so so as I kind of was putting this, thinking this through and went live, the first few days we got enough orders, and we kept to put in our minimum orders, and we then started restocking. Now, at that time, I would have loved to have had £500,000. And at that stage, listen up, you need money to start a business. The key thing I've learned is I'm so glad today, 3.5 years into this, nearly 4, that I only had £500. Because I believe that we've got a better business today because of that. Because the decisions that I've had to take in getting this, to making it a little bit more risk-averse, but also innovative, has been because I've had less money. Now, that's not, as you know in this room, we need money to do business. We need it. It's not that money's wrong, but for me starting this, to get the best business, to put the foundations, to test it, as a visionary, I would have invested here without having all these steps. I would have been in the mega 40,000 square foot factory and not realize, with the 20 staff, and then I would have been shut today. But the £500 allowed me to be creative, innovative, and so forth. So now is the time. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't let the someday rob you of what you need to do. Find your black bin bag story as leaders. The thing that seems insignificant is often the thing that is significant. It's the small thing, because then it takes the competition out of the game, and it shows you your role to play on the pitch. And so that's what I've done, the black bin bag, the story of that, and trying to fix that. So we created this bag company, to say, selling bags like this. But what we did was we sat down with a charity that was working with kids in care, and we started to look at what is the problem of bin bags. Why are bin bags being used and not proper bags? You see, in the UK, we are really fixed on policies. So when you actually look at the black bin bag issue using Google, that small percentage of the web, and you do the Google thing, you find very little information about the UK and black bin bags being used. What you find is it's hugely, in America, everything is, every kid uses trash bags, and there's a number of charities doing stuff about it. But in UK, because we are so fixed on policies done, now next problem, new policy, and we haven't thought through the actual delivering of those policies. And I started to hear from these kids in the care system that what was happening was social workers were arriving, and it was a lack of being unprepared. And so a kid standing with a bin bag, and then being taken in a car and having no bags. So that led us down a whole pathway of how do we get a bag, get these social workers prepared, and size was an issue. They also said at the time Madlug wasn't a brand that was recognized, that was a new idea. And what they did say was it didn't want a logo on it or a brand on it because they didn't want to be stigmatized. So they wanted it to be plain, it was, and having. But the words that we were using to kind of communicate our story was you have huge value, you have huge worth, and you have huge dignity and the right to be treated with dignity. Value, worth, dignity. And they said to me, Dave, can we put that on the bag? So they don't want a brand on it, but they want words on it, which is our brand. So we worked together and we got this little pack-away bag made. We've had some variations of it, but this is kind of the core, as you see on the screen. And it basically says, you're incredible, value, worth, dignity, Madlug. And when it opens up into a 35-litre bag. Now, some people in the room are thinking, well, that's small. Well, we've even thought about that in the design process. It's if you're a child that's moving with nothing or less, putting it into a super large bag reinforces the problem. If you're a kid that has lots of stuff, having a number of these in a social worker's car, they can have 10 of them. And no bin bags being used. So that's the reason. And then the bag also can become something that they can use for taking their swim gear or sports gear as they go. So that's been the kind of journey of Madlug, because I believe that every one of these children are incredible. So we've had this kind of journey and a dream to provide bags to children in the care system. Every time a bag's sold, a bag is given. Our first 3 years of trading, we give 3,000 bags to children. That was April of last year. From April of last year to now, we are sitting currently at 15,000 bags. As part of that journey to doing that, we had some £500. 9 months in, we got the Guardian paper and Nesta in London contacted us and says, you have been listed as one of the 50 businesses for social innovation and impact. You're not allowed to say anything, but we're going to get a journalist interview. It's going live on Sunday. And that took us to that was like a next step. A year later, I had this opportunity. I was part of an accelerator program for entrepreneurs, and they teach you how to pitch. And I got this email, Virgin are in town, they were at the DNA conference, and they've got their big bus, and you can win £5,000 and have brunch with Richard Branson. So I'm thinking, £5,000 would be really handy now, and Richard Branson would be one of my heroes, partly because he's dyslexic, and I love the way he does business and leads business. So I was thinking, well, it'd be nice to meet him. I applied. The reality was I didn't get accepted to that. And I thought, well, do you know what's in my diary? And I'll go down to Belfast and see who got through, see what I can learn. Ended up, there was a lot of people on the panel that have won competitions before against. It just wasn't my day to get accepted. Got on the bus and had one-to-one sessions that were free. Thought I'll just go and do that. Got to meet a PR lead for Virgin. I got the lead, communications lead, and somebody on crowdfunding. And they were like, why didn't you get accepted to do this today? And then at the end of the day, I got a film crew coming saying, can you sign that? Here's a waiver. Can you tell your story to the camera? Now, that for me has been a leadership learning, because here's the thing. Hunger is key. Hunger is key. Is it hungry to learn? I have never done business. You guys are a lot smarter in the room than I am, but I've had a hunger to learn. Learn differently, maybe, but a hunger to listen to audiobooks, a hunger to go to conferences, a hunger not just to be at conferences, but to sit and totally engage and just to absorb. And a hunger to go and find out how to be better. So I went to Virgin that day and found out. A few weeks later, I was on that holiday. You know, if you've ever started something and you're on a holiday and you've been working mad and your family have lost out and you haven't had a lot of money because it's all just making this thing happen. And I sacrificed everything and got to this place of first holiday. Arranged a bit of support so I didn't have to really work when I was in France. And halfway through, I told my wife I'm not going to work. She went to do the laundry that day, midweek between the 2 weeks. I get open my email and there was a chance to get in the game. £1,000 brunch with Richard Branson. I didn't read the email apart from that. What you have to do is a 60-second video pitch. Before my wife got back that day, I had a 60-second video pitch uploaded to Virgin, and to find out 2 days later that Madlug was finalist. Finalist for what? I had no idea. As a result of that, I then found out that what I was finalist in was we had 5 days to put a crowdfunder together that was, the winner of the £1,000 was the crowdfund that got the most raised in the first 72 hours. Dyslexic, not great at writing. All my volunteers at that time were away out of the country on their holidays, middle of the 12th week, and it was just like, right, how am I going to do that? You know, the thing of crowdfunding is you go and you get the people with money, you get them ready, they fund it, then the crowd follow, and it creates this wave. Well, I hadn't even had a meeting with anybody that even had a tenner, never mind £10,000. So as a result of that, what I did was I went live again on Facebook. Guys, we need to raise £10,000 in 72 hours. Who's on board? We're going live on Friday. We need you on board. Well, cut long story short, basically 10 minutes before the 72 hours was up, we were £7,500. We were £5,000 ahead of the other competition, and we didn't win. We came third. 2 of the other competitors basically came with £6,000 pledges. We had exhausted ours. The one who won got the £1,000. They didn't raise another penny for the rest of 4 weeks. The one who came second didn't get any money, didn't reach their target. And we finished our 4-week campaign in £24,500. As a result of that, I got invited. As a result of that, I got invited to have brunch with Richard Branson, a group of 4 or 5 others in London in that October. A year on from that, then we went viral last year. We had 200,000 people visit our website. I was getting nervous this morning, thinking, what work have I done to protect this? And I'm going away here with a whole load of questions and things to put the processes and stuff into place as an online business. But the reality is that we had 200,000 people visit our website, and it took us to a whole nother league. And that's been the journey of, and it started with a little black bag, bin bag story with a simple, someday wasn't going to rob me, it's going to be now, it's going to start. And what we've got is this company that provides bags for children, help customers show that they care, promote that children in care are incredible, and create jobs for care leavers. Now, we're not doing the job bit yet because we're kind of doing it on the head. If we'd have started there, which we could have got lottery funding and so forth to do that, the reality is we'd have been known today as an employment program with a byproduct of bags. Our dream is to be the Virgin, to be the Adidas, to be the Nike. That one mission is to be quality products, quality bags, taking on the biggest companies in the world. Why? Because we're the company that believes that every child in care is incredible. And that's what we're trying to do. I want to just conclude with a little story. When I started it, and there's been a lot this morning that has been about navigating the way. And there's been challenges. It hasn't been always easy for me. But and we've been listening about challenges and stuff. The reality is if I could tell you this, and this is maybe being easier, being dyslexic. But the thing is that there's no walls. There's just junctions. And it's a mindset when there's a challenge comes along. For instance, when we had 200,000 visitors to our website and we went viral and sold out in 10 hours every product we had, restocked a few hours later, or a few days later, and sold out again and totally, survived. A few months before that, we had been kind of like, in some ways, we had some challenge that our supplier had hit capacity and couldn't provide us with our bags that we had coming in for the summer. It could have put us really under. But I took a mindset to the guys I was working with and says, there's an opportunity in this, we just can't see it. And so we then went back to an original supplier. We started getting our bags done differently. It was a lot more work for us, but we did it. When we went viral, if we had stuck with the supplier that couldn't get the bags to us at the beginning of summer, I wouldn't be here today. Madlug wouldn't be a brand. That's how close it was. It was a matter of nearly. And if we hadn't had that negative challenge with a mindset that there's an opportunity in this, we wouldn't be here today with a business that is going into many, many countries. So fine line. I want to tell you a story. This is starting with the black bin bags. And you think it's just about giving a bag to a kid. You don't always see the end until you start. And so this summer, I was at a festival with Madlug stand. And we've sold in it 2 or 3 years. There's about 1,500 young people at it with some of their youth workers. And a youth worker was talking to me and he says, Dave, he was buying a bag and he says, Dave, we've got a young guy in our group who is a foster kid. And as he started to talk to me about it, he didn't say too much. He just says, and it's really good and so forth. I said to him, well, we normally give these bags to the kids because we don't want to stigmatize them. But around this festival, there was, out of the 1,500 young people, there was 300 plus young people carrying Madlugs. It was like every table, there would have been at least one Madlug. So in this environment, this kid would not have been stigmatized by carrying one of these. So I says, if you tell him to come down, he doesn't have to introduce himself, because I'm not going to use kids to promote and try and sell bags. I'm treating them with dignity. We don't need the photographs. We don't need to promote the brand that way. You just tell him to come down, choose a color of bag. He can go back to you as the youth worker, and you can let me know what color it is, and I'll give it to you for him as a little gift. It's free. Well, 2 days later, at the last day, these 2 youth workers arrived down with this guy. His name's Jay. He's 17 and a half. And I said to him, what color would you like? He says, I'm colorblind. I says, what football team do you support? And he says, the football team. And so he chose a red bag, so you can work out which one that is. And so we give him the red bag. And I just says, Jay, can you tell me your story? And Jay says, yeah. I have been in care system for 10 years. So 17 and a half, he entered care at 7 and a half. He says, for a 2-week period in that 10 years, I moved 15 times, and every time was with a black bin bag. He says, Dave, I had an issue with drugs. My placements were breaking down. He says, I'm 17 and a half, and I'm in an intensive foster placement. Now, as a youth worker, I love young people. And you suddenly, when you hear that drug thing, you think stereotype, hoodie and all that stuff. This guy was as sharp. He could have been sitting in this room today. And he would have been as sharp. He was smart. He was handsome. He was just a really nice guy. And I give him the bag and he says, Dave, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing. And as I started, I just thought, I looked outside the venue where the shop was, where our stall was. And I could see all these young people his age. And I says to him, Jay, what's amazing? As I started to share it, I broke down. And I'm not a breakdown kind of guy. Tears came to my eyes, and I had to say, I'm sorry. This guy, Jay, who's had a really rough life, saw some emotion. But I got it out, and I says, what's really amazing is that there's over 300 young people walking around this festival. And every one of them have chosen to buy a Madlug bag over a Nike, an Adidas, an Eastpak, and all the brands that we know. And I said, why? It's because every one of them believes that you are incredible. He goes off with his bag. He comes back about 3 hours later, just as we're starting to pack everything away. And he says, he had a friend this height, and I've never seen a young person, this little girl standing beside him, glowing. I've never seen a girl smile as much. And Jay comes and he fires his arms around me and he says, thanks, I'm just here to say thank you again. Well, that's not the end of the story. 2 days after the event, we get a message through Facebook Messenger. And it says this: I met Dave Linton at this festival, and I've been totally blown away by what you do. And I've been giving it lots of thoughts that when I'm 18 in a few months' time, I'm going to give all the money that I get to the work of Madlug so that other young people can experience what I have experienced. For me, that was a trigger point. That was a keep going, Dave. But the biggest trigger point for me was this: not only are we providing bags for children in care, but we're empowering people to wear bags that communicate that these kids are incredible. So it'd be short of me this morning to invite you guys into this story. I hate telling story. I don't believe you want to just hear story, but it's a story that you now know the kids in care. There are 90,000, many carrying their belongings in bin bags. And I want to invite you this morning into that story. Choosing Madlug as your bag brand and making a real difference in the lives of these incredible children. Getting your businesses, companies, organizations to choose Madlug when you need computer bags, and we'll sort you out for that. And let's see those 90,000 children be children like Jay. Smiling, excited, life changed, empowered. Because your company, you as a person, can really help give dignity to children in care. Thank you very much.